Drew DeArmond, welcome back to T-Town, man. I hope you're having a great day.
I am, Ryan. Always good to be on with you on Tide 102.9. How you doing this afternoon?
Man, I'm awesome, man. We featured you last Monday and Tuesday, had a chance to chat with you. And Wednesday, Nick Saban made the appearance. You're always a guy that listens closely to everything that Nick Saban presents. What was your takeaway from what Coach Saban said there at SEC Media Days?
Well, I've said this a few times, but I thought he was very relaxed, in a good mood. I mean, I saw him on ESPN 97.7 The Zone when he joined the Tom Abraham show with our own West neighbors. He even laughed a couple of times. I think he's at ease. I think he is much in a much better frame of mind with his coaching staff that he's put together and where these players are, mentally. And I think he's much more confident in the leadership of this group right now. And I think with Tua Tagovailoa at the controls and a guy that does a transcendent talent, and then you got, a guy like Dylan Moses who, he's been really in the public eye since the 8th grade, and I thought Dylan handled himself. I thought he was to the point. I thought he was very confident in himself as he's wanted to move over to that Mike linebacker role and be that kind of the alpha dog at the defense. And, and I'll say this. I know a lot of the media tried to create a firestorm with Dylan Moses and what he said. I mean, it's the sad part of the world we live in today when a kid can say something and have a quote kind of twisted around to fit someone's narrative. That if anyone had a pulse, they would know that he was saying when he was talking about that Alabama-Georgia game to me, and I was in there in the electronic media room recording the whole thing, he just talked about how physical that game was. He said it was the hardest on his body. He said he took him 2 days to feel healthy. And then he was asked later on about Clemson, and he said that's a game he still hasn't gotten over because Alabama played so poorly. And as we know, Clemson dominated that game and won the national championship. But I just think all this, everyone trying to say Alabama hasn't credited Clemson enough, I disagree with that. I think they understand what happened and who beat them, and I think they know that Clemson was the better team that day, and that until they play again, that Clemson's the champion.
Yeah, going back to Dylan Moses for just a couple of minutes, and you look back at what you were talking about, Clemson had an easier road to get there. They were fresh when they got to Santa Clara. Alabama was not. I'm not making excuses. I'm just stating a reality. Clemson had an easier way to get to the championship. And maybe that's one of the benefits when you play, the Boston colleges and Syracuse and NC State and even Florida State, where they've drifted away to just never be found again. It's one of those conversations when you look at Clemson, and it's the same thing in 2019. They've got another easier road to get there.
They do. I mean, the ACC 3 or 4 years ago was a much better league. But as you talked about, Ryan, and Florida State's fallen off a table. Jimbo Fisher left it in a shambles. Willie Taggart's trying to make them relevant again. We'll see if he can. Bobby Petrino had a top 20 program at one time, had a Heisman Trophy winner in Lamar Jackson at Louisville. They fall apart. Alabama, of course, really starting that. Alabama's done that to many a program, honestly. But they just don't have a challenger right now for Clemson in that league. And then think about this. Alabama had to really play 3 playoff games because Georgia was a playoff game in the SEC championship game against what was one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the country, while Clemson had to play Pitt, and they barely broke a sweat. Now, I know Pitt beat them a couple of years ago in a fluke game over in Death Valley, but with the ACC championship on the line, you're going to get Clemson's best shot. And sorry, Pitt just doesn't match up. So they didn't have to exert themselves very much. They, Notre Dame was 12-0, and I guess they deserve to be there. But when you look at Notre Dame and their top 22 compared to Alabama's, Clemson's, Oklahoma's, it doesn't compare. And so they easily, were able to subdue Notre Dame. And Alabama had to play one of the most potent offenses in the country with the Heisman Trophy winner and the number 1 pick in the draft. And, while Clemson wasn't 100% either, they didn't have Dexter Lawrence and 2 other backups due to their own personal mistakes with performance-enhancing drugs. Alabama didn't have a healthy pass rush. They didn't have Terrell Lewis. They didn't have Chris Allen, and they didn't have a good, I know someone that you think a lot of, Christian Miller, who had a great senior year. That was the biggest loss for Alabama in that Oklahoma game because Christian Miller did not play 1 snap in the national championship game. So if you don't have a pass rush against a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, then you're going to be in trouble. And Alabama was, and they didn't play very well. They were going to have to score. You know, it was going to have to be the kind of game it was in 2015. The Tide was going to have to score 40-plus points to win that game, but they weren't good enough along the line of scrimmage to run the football in short yardage and red zone situations and to sustain drives, and that's why they lost the game decisively.
Drew, let's go back to Dylan Moses for a couple of minutes. And I know we're all sort of overreacting to what he did say, but I think the way he said it and talking about the leadership, I had a chance to sit down with Dylan, and I think you did as well. I was impressed because I was looking for that next alpha dog, and I'm going to go ahead and put it on the responsibility of Dylan Moses. Nick Saban did that last Wednesday by telling Dylan Moses to go and represent that side of the football. But I liked what I heard from Dylan Moses from a leadership standpoint. He answered all the questions that I had from a leadership standpoint. I think Dylan Moses is ready to be that next alpha dog, Nick Saban linebacker that we have come to expect over the years.
I do too. I mean, I think, to be honest, that you need alpha dogs at almost every position in order to be great, Ryan. They know how to lead others and put the team before self. I think they have that in the inside linebacker room with Dylan Moses. I think Anthony Jennings can be that guy in the outside linebacker room. He's someone that's been through the wars. He's still recovering from that just terrific knee injury. But we started to see the old Anthony by the end of last year. And then as far as in the defensive line room, it really needs to be Raekwon Davis since he came back to school. He needs to, lead that group and understand that what he put on film as a junior was not what we saw as a sophomore, and this is a huge year for him. And then really in the secondary, there's a couple of them. I really think Xavier McKinney is going to be a leader for this group, even though he's a junior. And I think Shy Carter, he's a quiet, kind of unassuming guy, but all I need to know is he was a captain to the A-Day game. I know they didn't bring him or X to Hoover, but I think they're going to get excellent leadership from those two guys, from the senior Carter and from the junior, Xavier McKinney. I think Alabama has got leadership throughout their defense, and with Pete Golding now settling in, with Sal Sunseri and Charles Kelly, those additions to the coaching staff, and Brian Baker, it's a new staff on defense, and I think it's going to be one that is going to be all on the same page, and that's key because, as you know, with Alabama's defense, everyone, it's all about communication, and there needs to be, leadership and communication in all three levels. And if there is, this defense can get back to being elite.
Sure, I want to go something that Nick Saban was addressed, and I know he did it in one room upstairs because I had somebody tell me. Wes Neighbors also told me as well that he said it with him, talking about hiring coaches, that he's going to change philosophy a little bit. Guys that he believes is going to be around for a couple of years, not just these one-year coaches where they're using Alabama as a stepping stone to get to that next level. It seems like Nick Saban has changed a little bit of his coaching philosophy, and I think that's the key to success long-term for Nick Saban. If he continues to have to recycle coaches, I don't know how much longer he could do this the way that he's done it the last couple of years, but he looks like he's got some pretty stable pieces here in T-Town.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think a lot of it was trust, especially bringing back Sal Sunseri, because I know he's been quoted as saying in the past that Sal was as good an outside linebackers coach as he ever had, and Sal certainly has made a big impact in recruiting with some of the guys he's been able to help bring into the fold to this 2020 group. Sal's done it all. I mean, he's been a defensive coordinator, didn't have a lot of success at Tennessee, but he's been an outstanding position coach in the NFL. Last couple of stops with the Raiders and the Carolina Panthers. He's also been very good in college. He did a great job with Florida last year with their D-line, and, he's going to do a great job with Alabama's pass rushers. Charles Kelly, he's already got a national championship ring with Florida State helping Jeremy Pruitt. He's been through the wars. He kept Florida State's defense among the elite. He's already very familiar with the state of Alabama, having coached at Jacksonville State. I know he's an Auburn graduate, but he's somebody that's very familiar with the fabric in the state of Alabama. And he's an extra set of eyes and a veteran presence that can help Pete Golding. And then Brian Baker, he spent 19 years in the NFL. Last couple at Mississippi State, we saw how good their D-line was last year. Jeffrey Simmons, Montez Sweat, he helped to develop a lot of those guys. So, I mean, and they had Jonathan Abram, who was a first-round safety. So they had 3 first-round draft choices on that in their first 11 defensively. So he's taking guys that are veterans, that know what they're doing, and he's brought them in. And I think it's really going to help Alabama defensively because now, and this is a significant, step too. With the 10-man coaching staff, Ryan, he went with 6 and 4 the first year on offense and defense, 6 offense, 4 defense. Now it's 5 and 5. We know Coach Saban's still going to work closely with the secondary, but I thought it was interesting that he brought Charles Kelly in, to work with Carl Scott in that secondary this year for Alabama.
Drew, we're ranking Nick Saban's smartest decisions in Tuscaloosa. And whether it's been a quarterback switch, I mean, there's a couple, and this is the way I'm kind of wrapping my head around just smartest things that Nick Saban has done in Tuscaloosa, like the 5 smartest things. Number one's got to be when he told Mal Moore that he was coming to Tuscaloosa. That's number one, right? I mean, none of this happens without him saying, yes, I'll go to Tuscaloosa. Tua Tagovailoa switch at Georgia at halftime, I think has got to be in that top 5. Help me. Come up with a couple of things that you think smartest decisions Nick Saban has made in Tuscaloosa. In your opinion, what is one of those that's got to be in that top 5?
Well, I think one of them is hiring Jim McElwain.
Oh, yeah, sure, 100%.
I mean, I think, and nobody had ever heard of Coach Mack. I mean, he was at Fresno State with Pat Hill, and he brought in Coach Mack, and they had not won a national championship yet. Remember that, and they were coming off of a tumultuous year with Major Applewhite, who ironically is back at Alabama as an analyst. So all these people that think Nick Saban, sometimes when he gets rid of coaches, it's not necessarily an animosity; it's just a business decision. He's brought Major back after his head coaching tenure at Houston. But I think Jim McElwain's got to be up there in that top 5. It was certainly a great move. And then I think Lane Kiffin has got to be up there. Even with all the controversies that happened with Lane at Alabama, he changed Alabama's offense after what we saw from 2008 through 2013, because Doug Nussmeier continued basically what we saw under Jim McElwain. But Nick Saban's always been one that basically understood when you needed to change. And that's what all the great coaches do. And I think the hirings of those 2 coordinators have to go in the top 5 because Lane Kiffin changed the style of offense. He developed offenses that featured one-year starters in Blake Sims and Jake Coker. Jake Coker winning a national championship. And then he built a great offense around a true freshman quarterback. We'd never seen a true freshman quarterback take snaps until Jalen Hurts did it. And then, like you said, you got to have the decision that he had to make at halftime of the Georgia game to put Tua Tagovailoa in that top 5. So I think 4 of them have to be those 2 moves at offensive coordinator, and then certainly the moves with Tua Tagovailoa, and then of course just accepting the job at Alabama. I think those all have to be up there in Nick Saban's biggest decisions.
Wow, you mentioned Lane Kiffin, and you think about where Alabama is. But if we were listing the top 5 dumbest mistakes from Nick Saban, I think one of those is the top 5 of firing Lane Kiffin. So, I mean, think about that, the contrast. Hiring him, but also firing him has got to be there too, because Nick Saban, if he could have just kept him for 5 or 6 more days, I think he'd have won a national title. And some of that was some of that was Lane Kiffin's responsibility. I agree.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Agreed.
All right, I want to go to Tennessee real quick. Let me take you to Matt Hayes, BleacherReport.com. Matt's been around for probably 30 years covering college football. He wrote an article last week, and I just want to, because you're in an area that you get enough Tennessee people that listen to you guys up in the Rocket City, 97.7 The Zone. Drew DeArmond with us, Drew D, 977 ESPN. Final question. I want to take you to Matt Hayes' article. He said Tennessee will never be elite again. Do you agree with Matt or you disagree?
Well, I don't think they'll ever, be a program that's in the college football playoff conversation year in, year out. If you want to talk about that being elite, do I think they can become a program that wins 8 to 9 games a year again? Yes, but where they're going to struggle is they don't have a natural recruiting base in Tennessee. The high school football is not very good year in and year out. It's not very deep. They have to recruit nationally. I think they kind of let their facilities not go. It wasn't, it didn't slip to the point of where Florida's having to spend so much money on theirs. But still, their facilities did lag a little bit, and I think they're going to have a hard time. Now that Florida's upgraded theirs, they have a natural recruiting base in the state. When you've got Kirby Smart, Georgia's got a natural recruiting base, and they can take players from each of those states. But again, it's just, and they have a rabid fan base. I think it's going to be hard for them to be consistent. And quite frankly, with Jeremy Pruitt as coach, if he does become an outstanding coach, I think whether the Alabama job come open or some other elite jobs around the country, especially Alabama, if Dabo Swinney doesn't come home, then I think Jeremy Pruitt would be very open to leave Tennessee. So I don't think they'll ever be how they it's a level of where Philip Fulmer had them or General Neyland years and years and years ago. But I think they can be what Bill Battle had Tennessee as, and of course that was very competitive within the SEC. Of course, he could never beat his mentor, Coach Bryant. That's why he got dismissed. But I don't ever see Tennessee being a consistent top 5, top 10 team every year. I think they can have years where they contend, but I don't think it'll ever be consistent.
I just want to say thanks again for giving me the Herschel Walker VHS tapes. I'm still hearing it. I'm still hearing from the idiots over in Athens.
Oh, hey, man, you were going to. Appreciate the shout out on Aaron Torres podcast. Aaron's a great guy out there in California. As you know, I've been unapologetic in saying Herschel Walker VHS tapes, Herschel Walker DVDs. Certainly, I'll be chirping again if Georgia doesn't live it up to it this year. I think they're the best team in the East, but we'll see if they can handle, prosperity, and that if Kirby Smart can get out of his own way to get his team back to Atlanta. And, but the bottom line is he's done a good job there, but not great because he's choked a couple of times. And as a young coach, he's had a lot of bravado. I still equate Kirby Smart to the Pat Dye of this generation. And what I say about that is Coach Dye came along at Auburn. He knew Coach Bryant was near the end. He felt like he could outlast Coach Bryant. He did, but he wasn't able to sustain that program, and eventually it went off the rails, and they ended up on 60 Minutes. Well, that happened to Kirby Smart. I don't know, but I certainly think he thinks he can outlast Nick Saban. He even made reference to it at SEC Media Days. Well, I don't know how much longer Nick Saban's going to coach. And I thought to myself, well, if he's putting his foot up your ass, so you better hope that it's sometime soon, or you may just be considered Mark Richt's little brother. So we'll have to wait and see. But certainly, Kirby Smart has done a good job, but not a great one so far in Athens.
Couldn't you just imagine Kirby Smart getting on his knees, coming back to Tuscaloosa, and saying, please, please, Father, give me another job. Please, Daddy, Nick Saban, can I be an analyst for you, please? Please?
Well, Ryan, I can tell you this. I think it's more likely that Will Muschamp ends up back in Tuscaloosa than Kirby Smart, because Will has the toughest schedule in all of college football this year, which could put him on the hot seat the next year. So maybe we might see Will Muschamp make another run with Nick Saban. I think that's more likely than Kirby. But I will say this. They let Mark Richt stick around for 15 years, averaging 10 wins a year. And even I'll say this for our good friend over there in Athens. If he keeps averaging 10 wins plus per year and winning divisions, I don't think that Georgia will ever get rid of him. They'll just keep making excuses and watching those Herschel Walker DVDs.
Drew DeArmond, I appreciate you, man. I hope you have an awesome afternoon and an awesome week there on 97.7 The Zone. 7 until 9 with Scott Tyson. I appreciate you for being a part of the show in Tuscaloosa. Hope you have a great week, Drew.
I will. And, Ryan, I want to say one more thing. I know you guys are having those polls. You were talking about, in your mind, one of the dumbest decisions Nick Saban ever made, firing Lane Kiffin. My dumbest, and it's never going to be topped, hopefully anyway, is not letting A.J. McCarron win the 2013 Iron Bowl. And that's the end of story.
Yep. No, and we'll get to the dumbest ones later this week. We'll get to the dumbest Nick Saban. Today, we feel like we've hit Nick Saban for about 3 days in a row. So today we're going to spend all day praising and talking about the smartest decisions. But it's coming later this week. I appreciate you, Drew. Thank you, sir.
Well, and I'll tell you another smart decision, turning down the Texas Longhorns.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that. Well, but see, I think he used – well, he may not have, but Jimmy Sexton did. I think he used Texas to get more money here in Tuscaloosa.
You got to understand, Ryan, he'd never been anywhere longer than 5 years before coming to Alabama, so it's significant that he's still in Tuscaloosa.
No, 100%. I'm writing that one down. I like that Texas move. Thank you, Drew. I hope you have a great day, man.
Thank you, Ryan.